voice of the 49ers, Mr. Greg Papa. And as we just remarked before the break, my least favorite Greg Papa to hear is disappointed Greg Papa, surprised Greg Papa. I can't believe what I'm seeing in front of my eyes, Greg Papa. And he converted an emotion that we all felt while we were watching that game at Levi Stadium and ending our Christmases on a bag of cold note. But he joins us right now, the voice of the Niners, as he does each and every week, good or bad. Greg Papa, good morning, sir. Hope your Christmas was great. Otherwise, how are you?
Well, the Coochie Daddy cookies were still delicious, and my sister sent an extra box this year, so I think I have some when we get back from Washington after we celebrate the New Year. So you sound down, Dave. You got your jobber down a little bit, so I'm gonna pick it up.
Okay.
Here's what I would say. I know that loss was disappointing on Christmas night. May see this team again in the Super Bowl, may not. If they can get there, if we can get there, but it's all right in front of the Niners. They win these last two games. They are 13-4, same record they had last year. And last year, 13-4 wasn't good enough. Philadelphia went 14-3. You missed out by one game. So this year, Philadelphia's got 4 losses. So if you win this game Sunday in Washington, and it's a hard reality. My biggest fear of the Christmas game was you lose the game, you get injured, and you wake up and it's Tuesday. And you're like, whoa, we got to fly to Washington like a couple days later. So all those things happen. The injuries, I think, are manageable. They'll have to move some people around in the secondary for Jair Brown's knee injury. Logan Ryan's played a lot of football. And so if they go there and beat Washington, then it's going to come down to beat LA. And that's going to be a hellacious game, the last game of the year. If Philadelphia wins against Arizona, there's a scenario where the Niners could clinch on New Year's Eve and have the ultimate New Year's Eve celebration on the plane. Yeah. Would that be incredible? If Detroit loses to Dallas on Saturday night and Philadelphia loses to Arizona, which seems unlikely, but Arizona's head coach is Jonathan Gannon, who was Philadelphia's defensive coordinator. So he knows how to stop that offense, and he has obviously theories on their defense and how to score. So if they can pull that upset off and the Niners win, then it won't go down to the last game of the year. But like a couple of years ago in 2021, when they had to go to L.A. to merely make the playoffs, I think we'd have a beat L.A. scenario to be the number 1 seed, quite possibly. And then you wonder, when are we going to play that game? Would it be flexed to Sunday Night Football as a standalone game? Would it be moved to Saturday? Right now, it's an either or. It could be Saturday or it could be Sunday. I'm talking about that first weekend in January. I don't think it'll be Saturday because if the Niners win, then the Philadelphia game doesn't matter the next day, and the NFL likes to have every game have meaning. So, and then if you move it to Sunday night and Philadelphia loses earlier, then the Niners game won't be as important. So you don't want that on Sunday Night Football. So maybe they just leave it all, where they all kick off concurrently in the Fox window on that Sunday, Sunday in January, in the 1:00 window our time. So, but either way, the loss was disappointing. We can get into why it happened and Brock's interceptions, but it's still there. Win these last two, go 13-4, and you're the number 1 seed. That's the goal. When you start the year is to be the number 1 seed. It's all right there. Just win these last two, beat LA.
There he goes. We're talking with Greg Papa here. Greg, let's ask about Brock because, he's been so good. The guys, we've talked about him every week. All the things are still there for him, too. I still think the MVP can happen for him if the finish is good. But what was it about Baltimore? He's a timing guy, throws guys open, reads things faster than everybody. What did they do that just kind of boggled him up a little bit?
I think they got him excited on the first series. Niners drove right down the field. George Kittle got some man coverage against their safety, Marcus Williams, who George knows well from New Orleans. They had an epic matchup on a 4th and 2 when Jimmy was the quarterback in 2019 in New Orleans, that 48-45 shootout. He beat Marcus Williams. And he got matched in man, and he beat him on a 3rd down, beat her for 58 yards. He took it down to the low red zone, and Brock was excited. And he came out of the next play, and at first down, they went into a quarters coverage, and Kyle Hamilton was just sitting there. And the Niners really didn't do anything, Chase, to move him off that hash. He was kind of sitting there. And he just intercepted the ball. He saw Debo flash across, and he made a mistake. And that took you out of the low red zone. The other ones were more Niners scheme. To me, the third one was really bad for Brock, I think, when the flags were on the field. Christian was called for a chop block. He said he did see the flags, and he read the body language of the linemen, the Niners offensive linemen. So he had to know that the penalty was against the Niners. The play was going to come back. So no matter what you pick up here, they're going to take the penalty. So just ground the ball. And he tried to throw across his body. Ball got tipped up, and again, Kyle Hamilton intercepted. The second one was a really unconventional blitz. So they sent both outside corners. You hardly ever see that. They sent Braden Stevens from Brock's left and Marlon Humphrey from his right. And the ball went. It was a laser screen to Debo going out left. And they tipped the ball up in the air. Stevens got tight, and Marlon Humphrey picked it. The last one, he got hit, and the ball went right to Patrick Queen. But, to me, obviously it's on Brock's ledger statistically, the interceptions. That's what happens. You throw the ball, the other team takes it. It's your interception. But it's not that simple. And I think the Niners got to look at what Baltimore did really was play tendencies with the Niners. They like to show a lot of illusion of pressure with those two inside linebackers, Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. They're always jumping in the A-gap like they're going to blitz, so you have to count for them. But what they did, they brought him some. Queen did blitz. But I think he blitzed the first play of the game, and they got burned by George, and they backed out of it, is they had those two inside linebackers get to their landmarks and take away the hooks, the curls. They were droppers, and they choked off the middle of the field. Where if you think of the Niner offense, what do you think of? You think of Kittle over the middle, the Debo dig, and Ayuk slant on McCaffrey Texas route where he cuts inside. It's all that in-breaking stuff. They just choked that off, and they brought pressure from the outside. And then conversely, the quarterback, and that's why he wasn't a high draft pick. He's 6 feet, 5'8", 7-inch tall. He's not 6'5". So balls get tipped. They'll go back to the Cincinnati game when Jermaine Pratt tipped the ball. Now, he was right on top of Brock, and this play where Brandon Stevens tipped the ball. He's had some balls tipped here and there. Not a huge number of tips, but some. And I think that's kind of the scouting report on him is when he stays in the middle out of the pocket, can he see it? Remember the interception he threw to Jordan Brooks in Seattle on Thanksgiving night? There were back-to-back can calls where he flipped plays, and I'm not sure he could see. The first one almost got intercepted, and the second one did for a pick six to Brooks going to McCaffrey, and we kind of thought, can he see in there? They're kind of clouding it up. So I think he'll bounce back. He bounced back this week in practice, but I think you have to look at it. It's not a Brock Purdy problem. It's a San Francisco 49ers offense problem.
Speaking of the offense, as we're joined by the voice of the Niners, Greg Papa, we're focusing, and rightfully so, on the Ravens game, on Brock Purdy, on the things that went wrong. Talk to us a little bit as far as what you know about the state of the offensive line. Worried about those injuries going in, whether it's the Commanders or anybody else. How badly banged up are they going to be?
Well, it got ridiculous the other night. I mean, you're playing Spencer Burford at right tackle and McKivitz at left tackle, and I don't even know what they were doing. Ben Bartch got in the game. I was confused. Brendel was the one constant, and the other constant is John Feliciano. I think he might be the most underrated 49er this year. I mean, he's just filled in. A guy who played with the Raiders, didn't play much there, was a backup, went to Buffalo and started a lot of games. Last year he was the New York Giants, and they were a playoff team last year. He was their starting center every game, plus the two in the playoffs. And Feliciano's ability to jump in at left guard for Aaron Banks or right guard for Spencer Burford. He also can go to center for Brendel. He played center all last year for the Giants, but he hasn't been needed to. So Feliciano's been the fixer. He just goes wherever you need to go. So if Banks can't go in this game, then Feliciano can go to left guard. Trent's back. He practiced yesterday and Wednesday. I think he'll practice today, and then we're going to fly to Washington this afternoon. So I expect Trent to be able to play. So you'd have Williams at left tackle and Feliciano at left guard, Brendel at center, Burford at right guard, and Colton McKivitz at right tackle. So you'd be fine. You just don't have a lot of room as far as the backups because of the injury. If Banks can't be up for the game and he has to be down. But you do have, Barch mixing in and Pryor and Jalen Moore. So they got some backups. But I think the other area, Dave, where the concern is this Jair Brown knee injury. And sounds like he may be out for a while. So you may see Logan Ryan. And he played a handful of snaps, so we're number 33. Play a lot in this game next to Sean Gibson. Guys played a lot of football with New England, won Super Bowls there, Tennessee, and we saw him at Tampa Bay last year and play really well against the Niners. So, but I think with Feliciano and his ability to move from guard to guard so easily has been a godsend for this team, and specifically against these Washington Commanders, the strength of their team. They traded Chase Young. They traded Montez Sweat to Chicago. They kept the two inside guys, number 93 and number 94, Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, are the strength of their team, and they play D-tackle. So they'll be right over the middle of that line, Brendel and Feliciano and Burford. And so John's got to play well. But he knows the Giants. He knows the Commanders well, being a Giant. Last year, he's blocked these guys quite a bit. So I think that'll be the key to the game. But everything I'm talking about that Baltimore did with Brock and tipping balls and getting in his face and being a shorter quarterback, if they're going to be a problem in this game on Sunday, it's going to be those two tackles collapsing the pocket and causing trouble for the run game. And then you can always run wide, though. And then, do you have to move Brock out of the midline to give him a clear path to be able to throw the ball?
Greg, I'd be curious your thought on just watching Lamar Jackson play, too. Because, look, the Niners defense is good. They were in some tough spots because of short fields, and turnovers that the offense committed. But I thought they were doing a good job on him. But the fact that he can just make a play on his own, how much did that, demoralize maybe the defense that, to me, was getting some pressures and some hurries on him?
He is the best running quarterback of all time. And we've seen some good ones, Going back to the early 70s, the Bears had a lefty quarterback, Bobby Douglas, that ran for almost 1,000 yards. But he was big and strong with that backfield. They had Gil Sayers back then. But Michael Vick probably on pure speed and running ability. Randall Cunningham was terrific. Steve Young. Russell Wilson is a scrambler. A lot of guys can run the ball. And more so now, Justin Fields is really good. But Lamar is just different. Those other guys are more straight line speed, or Colin Kaepernick. When Kaepernick got a lane, he could run it all the way to the house. Terrell Pryor with the Raiders could run. But this guy, he's a running back. The way he sets up blocks, the way he slips and slides, it's not just straight line speed, Jason. I don't know if he's ever been timed in a 40. But what do you think he is? 4.4 or something? But it's the change of direction. It's the 360 spin. He looks like Charlie Garner, the old Niner and Raider running back, Eagles running back, where he just goes like he's playing on hockey skates. He just slips and slides, and you can't get him down. And he has no problem spinning around and not looking at the line of scrimmage and coming out of it. And he's just, I don't know what you do with him. Spying him is not enough to me. You got to double spy him. And then I don't even know if that's enough. So, but you can't sack him. And I think the Niners wanted to blitz him, and they were able to get him on ground. But he's just so tough, and he's able to overcome what is really poor throwing fundamentals. He is not a great thrower of the football. Every time he takes a shotgun snap, he flips the ball around. He never catches the ball clean and just throws it. He flips it, and then he throws off his back foot a lot. He is not a natural thrower of the ball as far as the pullback and the windup. He just flicks his wrist and he darts the ball, but he is at times accurate, but he doesn't need to be, because he creates such separation with his wide receivers and his eligibles because of the threat of the run. Once he breaks the pocket, you have to respect that he's going to run, but he always keeps his head up and his eyes up, and he looks downfield for the throw, and then you get a bust. And he's like Tim Ryan was saying the whole night, you got to defend two plays. The first 3 seconds is the play that Todd Monken calls. The next 3 are Lamar, being Lamar. And what do you do there? He's a handful. So I think you just got to get him in a situation where he has to drop back and make throws. Early in the game, he was not good at all. He sailed one to the sideline. He was missing throws. He threw behind Zay Flowers. He was inaccurate. But once he's able to get out of the pocket and threaten you both as a runner and a thrower as he presses the line of scrimmage, he is difficult to deal with, and that's not going away. You could have somewhat of a scheme for him, but the greatest defenders in football, he's going to make look bad time to time because, as I said, I think he's the best running quarterback that's ever been.
I want to switch gears as we talk to Greg Papa, the voice in the Niners. You know, my favorite show with you this year, I know I speak for Jason, was our Story Time with Greg Papa show where you kind of kicked your shoes off and waxed poetically about Mr. Davis and your time with the Raiders. And one of the subjects was Antonio Pierce, and you were surprised based on a comment that Pierce had made in the past as a player about the Raiders. A little surprised at the Raiders hiring him. And I've kept that in my mind throughout the year, in the back of my head, as I've watched this unfold. And I wanted to ask you, after the Raiders went in and beat the Chiefs, and I know this is obviously an impossible situation, Greg, but take away the comment. I can't help myself but think, Greg, that based on what you've told us, that weirdly enough, it seems like Pierce might be the exact type of coach that Mr. Davis would have liked had that not happened. Am I off base based on the way the teams rallied around him, and he seems like he's very much embraced the Raider way?
So they're winning. I mean, they went into Kansas City and won.
Yeah.
The game before, I lost track. How many touchdowns did they score in that game?
Right.
When they get to 63, I mean, it was ridiculous. So the bottom line of the defense is playing great. They scored a couple of touchdowns in the game before and the Thursday night game, and then Christmas Day. And we were getting ready for the Niner game, but I was watching, and they scored 2 defensive touchdowns in 7 seconds. So the comments that he made just struck a chord with Al, and I know how angry he was. It was more just he thinks that of our team kind of a comment, but he took it personally and he thought he shouldn't have been said. So if this was Al Davis's Raiders, there's no way Antonio Pierce would be on the staff.
Sure.
But it's not. It's Mark's Raiders, and I don't know if Mark even knows anything about those comments. He probably doesn't, unless it's been relayed to him. I told Paul Gutierrez about it when they hired him, so I couldn't believe. I'm like, is that Antonio Pierce, the Giants linebacker? Are you kidding me? So it kind of took me back. But would Al keep him as the coach? Al didn't like defensive coaches. Defensive head coaches. He wanted it to be an offensive coach. He wanted, by and large, with the exception of a couple of times, he had an offensive mind. He wanted the head coach to call the plays. And then Al really was the defensive coordinator. The worst job in America is being Al Davis's defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
He obliterates them because Al coached defense, he coached D-line, and whenever he really has a major criticism, it's about the defense and the bust. And I can remember so many times him just ripping Rob Ryan in particular. One time we lost a game, and Al, after a game was over, I tried to hide from him, but he would send Butch, the security guard, back to get me and say, Mr. Davis wants to talk to you. And I go up there, and he's sitting right next to Rob. Rob's in the seat next to him. And Al's just, what am I going to do with this guy? What should I do with him? He's just, real loud. I'm like, well, take him into the town square and tar and feather him, and then give him a firing squad and shoot him. I'm like, what do you want me to say? It was a football game. He had a bad game. So, but he was tough on defensive guys. So, all that being said, I think Mark made a mistake with Rich Bisaccia a couple of years ago. I knew Rich well. I was still, when John Gruden got hired, I was still with the Raiders for a few months there, and Rich was the special teams coordinator, and there was an Italian restaurant in Danville. We kind of ran into each other, and John would bring the staff over there. John lived out in Blackhawk, and I saw Rich a few times, and I thought he's one of the best special teams coordinators in the history of football. And after that terrible, trying time when John was forced to resign, Bisaccia got their team in the playoffs. And there was a couple of bad, plays here and there and calls in a playoff game in Cincinnati. They would have won that game. But I thought he erred there. He tried to go large, obviously, with Josh McDaniels, and made a big mistake. So all reports I get, they like him in the building there. So it sounds like they will possibly keep him. I'm not sure, but this is Mark Davis's Raiders. Davis, not Al's.
Yeah.
Al, he would not have Antonio Pierce in the building. after what he said, or he'd make him apologize or settle it somehow if he believed in his football acumen. But it's just still odd to me whenever I hear the name and I see him on the sideline and saying how much he loves the Raiders. If people brought up the comment that he made about the Raiders many, many years ago when he was a linebacker with the Giants, or am I the only one that knows that comment?
I think you broke that story as far as I know.
Same here.
I mean, but has it been picked up on? Do people talk about that?
I did. Yes, I did. I did see after you made those comments on our show, it was picked up by a lot of your Raiders Twitter and message board that talked about that. And there was, you know, as always, everything was calm and measured on social media. There was the group that expressed surprise. They didn't remember those comments and agreed with you. There was the group that said, now that you're with the Niners, you hate the Raiders. And then there was the group that just indiscriminately.
That's not true. That's not, I mean, just look at the facts. He did make that comment. Did anybody ever ask Antonio Pierce about those comments?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah. It doesn't really matter. It's a long time ago.
Sure.
Al Davis is no longer alive. So it's Mark Davis's Raiders, and whether he said him or not, he was, you know, preparing to play a football game. What he said was, we could beat the Raiders with 10 guys on the field. And that was, first of all, who says that going into a game? It was the week of the game.
Yeah.
And the game got out of hand, and they wound up pulling Eli, and I think they played Derek's brother David in that game, came in to finish up, if I remember correctly. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's about how he's got them playing now, and they're playing pretty well. The big question really is Kansas City ever going to get it right? I always look ahead to the Super Bowl and matchups, and I fear them so much. But I'm starting to wonder if they're going to get it straight. I think one thing for sure, Mahomes is going to, at some point, you would think, have to play a road playoff game for the first time in his career.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, do you follow as we wrap up? Last question, then. You know, you cover basketball just like you cover football. We've seen this before with your Warriors, with the Shaq Kobe Lakers, with a lot of these dynasties or dynastic teams that seem to get bored at some point. We all question whether or not they've still got it, if this is the year that it ends. And then what do you know? They're there in the Super Bowl. Does that apply to football for you at all?
Not in that sense. It's more the salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
They had to make a call with Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
And when they decided we're not going to pay Tyreek Hill $30 million a year, and we can trade him and get all these draft picks back, and for a while it works. You know, they brought in Juju Smith-Schuster and McCole Hardman, and they had enough, and it looked like Mahomes was good enough with those other guys as long as he had Kelsey. But this group, they just seem disjointed. Whenever he breaks the pocket in the scramble drill, there's nobody uncovering. The offensive line is not very good. You know, after they beat the Niners in the Super Bowl, and clearly Eric Fisher held Nick Bosa, the 2-3 chip jet wasp play, but it didn't get called by Vinovich and his crew. But in any regard, the next year, you know, Fisher's gone. They lost the other tackle as well. And Tampa Bay killed him in the Super Bowl because Mahomes was on his back most of the game. They went out and got tackles to overcome. And now they just don't have the tackle play. They got one that's Wiley. It's playing for used to be a Washington Commander. So he's not being protected in the pocket. He can't trust the people around him. Kelsey looks a little different, being able to uncover. So the odd thing is their defense is probably the best defense they've had in this run. But the offense is not there. But I still feel like I want to see, you know, can Lamar beat them in a playoff game? Can Tua beat them in a playoff game? You know, Cleveland looks like, is Flacco going to be able to do this the whole way through? I mean, he looked so amazing last night to start, and then it almost looked like he got tired at the end of the game. His whole neck is throwing the ball like every play. They had a good running game last night. They got it going a little bit, but I don't know. The AFC in Buffalo, could Josh Allen run the table from whenever Buffalo gets in if they win the AFC East and they're going to play Miami the last week of the year? I mean, the NFC, we kind of know who the teams are. There's a group of 4 at the top that are pretty dominant. Do we have any idea who's going to win the AFC and go to the Super Bowl?
Nope.
The Browns.
You think so? I wouldn't be. What a story that would be. A Flacco. They got a great defense. That defense is great.
You know what's great? Your visits with us each week, and as we say goodbye for the final show of the year, hopefully next week we are celebrating lots of Ayuk's on fires, lots of touchdown CMCs. And lots of an excited Greg and Tim enjoying the resurgence of Brock Purdy after a tough game. So we appreciate you, friend. Enjoy the flights.
May old acquaintances be forgotten. I never quite understood that. Do you have any idea what that means exactly? Never quite got that one.
Probably something about following.
Why should we forget old acquaintances? I don't get that.
I'm going to remember them. That's kind of weird. You're the best, buddy. Enjoy the cookies, and we'll talk to you next week. All right,
Happy New Year.
We'll talk next week, man.
All right, thanks, Greg. Bye-bye. That is Greg Papa. We will take a break. When we come back, listen, we got a ton of stuff. Friday Fun of Games, the bowl game. What to